Hi everyone,
Beautiful.
welcome to another episode of Sunday Speaks. I, as always, am Cheyenne Severin, and today I'm here with.
Brian Cellary.
Brian, this month is Substance Misuse Prevention Month, and according with that, we're kind of just taking a minute to look at adverse childhood experiences and how that impacts you later in life because they make you more vulnerable to substance misuse. I know it's kind of a broad question, but would you like to tell me a little bit about your childhood?
Yeah, absolutely. And once again, my name is Brian Cellary. I'm in long-term recovery. I've been sober close to 13 years at this point. I've been able to, connect with so many amazing people and organizations like Alumni in Recovery. And first and foremost, want to, give you guys a little shout out for all the work that you guys, do in the community. And, it's amazing because growing up, it was you had the DARE program and you had a couple other programs out there, but we were never able to hear from people who had been through our school systems or school systems around us, who were able to share their stories and the emotions. But I first went to treatment in 2010, and I heard a lot of traumatic stories about people's upbringings, everything like that. But for me, I had a great childhood. I came from a great family. I came from, a great community, and my parents were always loving and supporting. And, I heard all these stories about, neglect and abuse. And, for me, that just wasn't my story. But, one of the things I really had as a kid is I was always anxious. For me to go on to a podcast like this and share my story, share my experiences, I wouldn't be able to do it. I was the type of kid who, on the outside, it always looked like I was doing pretty well. I was pretty social. I was involved in a lot of different sports. My family and parents always kept me very active. But, if you asked me to read in front of a class, I wasn't able to do that. If you asked me to stand in front and present, I was always the last one to kind of do that. So I had all these emotions and these anxieties that I wasn't even aware of what they were. And then, fast forward to high school, I remember, I wanted everyone to like me, right? And I was always a people pleaser. I always wanted to fit in with every single different crowd. I didn't want anyone not to like me. And what happened with that was a lot of peer pressure came around. And I'll never forget sitting in the back of a science class in the morning and someone offered me a pill. And I asked, what is this? And they said, it's something that's, going to make you really feel really good. And I really caved into the peer pressure. I was never one to really experiment with a lot of drugs, but I remember I took it and I thought this overwhelming sensation was going to happen. And I waited a period, another period, then lunch happened. Then all of a sudden, it finally started to hit me, and that was an opiate. And it felt like all of my problems had gone away for that day. And I just remember that feeling of all the anxieties and everything kind of leaving me. And that's really where my drug addiction really started. And from like that day forward, I really wanted to have that experience more times than not. And it was really masking up, a lot of things that I was going through personally. But, the one traumatic experience I don't think I ever processed until I was kind of well into recovery was actually I was pitching when I was in sixth grade at a local ball field, and we saw all these fire trucks going by, and we thought it was just a little kitchen fire or something else, and then all of a sudden, I found out it was my house that was on fire, and I remember my dogs were in there and everything like that, and I remember pulling up to the street. The entire street was backed up, and our entire house had burned down. And I remember probably for 3 or 4 years after that, I had a lot of trouble sleeping. I had a lot of, trouble, just concentrating and, just constantly thinking about that and not feeling safe in my own house, even when it was rebuilt and everything like that. But, as far as my overall childhood, it was just filled with, a lot of anxieties and things I went through. And then eventually, later on in my addiction, in late high school into college, it kind of turned into depression. And that's where my addiction really spiraled out of control. So I know it's a broad question and kind of talked all over the place, but that's my experience.
Hmm. So how long were you in active addiction for?
I was in active addiction from the time I was 16 to 22. I
Hmm.
was one of the few people to really get lucky. Right after my 21st birthday, had a little incident, a big incident where I ended up in Valley Hospital, one of the local hospital systems in Bergen County. And it kind of started my recovery journey. I bounced in and out of rehabs for about 9 months and then finally landed down in Florida. And it was a place that, I felt comfortable. There was a great sober community down there. And you know, there was a lot of people my age who were in recovery who I was able to relate to. So, and it's amazing. I remember going from Valley Hospital to a program in Connecticut, my first one ever, and I was talking to a psychiatrist from Yale University, and I just couldn't understand all the clinical and medical lingo that he was, he was talking about. I felt like I was in a college class talking to this guy, and then I'll never forget that one night I couldn't sleep. I was pacing, and I talked to one of the behavioral health techs who was about 3 years sober, and this gentleman talked to me about what he'd been through, how he'd overcome it. He talked about the promises in the big book and how they've all come true in his life. And, I wanted to believe him, but I could just really relate to that guy who was in recovery and was being vulnerable with me. And that's what I try and do every day. I think it's a privilege to, you know, be sober, be in the recovery community. And I also have the pleasure of working in the community as well. So
So you're the CEO of something like that that helps with recovery, right?
yes, I'm the CEO of Valley Spring Recovery Center. We're a local outpatient program in Norwood, New Jersey, which is right on the border of New York and New Jersey, about 15 minutes away from where I grew up. And, I've been in this field for a long time. I've worked everywhere from a behavioral health tech to an admissions coordinator up to my current position. But when people ask me if I'm the CEO or founder, I usually reply, I'm just a guy in recovery. And that's the way I look at it. I try to, bring my own experiences in to the patients and talk to them. It's one of my favorite things is to be on site and work with the patients, hands on. And I really enjoy working with the families as well. I'll never forget what I put my mother and my father through in the active addiction, and the nights that I was missing, which turned into days I was missing. And, we can kind of laugh at it these days, but in the time it was real. And, at the end of the day, they wanted to see action. They were sick of hearing about my words. And, I try to just bring my story of, hope, to those families and let them know, but we are an outpatient program specializing in substance use and mental health treatment.
Hmm. So you specialize in substance misuse and mental health. Do you do anything else or?
So currently, we treat adults 18 and above for partial care and intensive outpatient. Partial care is 5 day a week programming from 9 o'clock in the morning till 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And then we have various different tracks for intensive outpatient. Usually it's 3 times a week, either 6 to 9 at night or 9 to 12 during the day. So we have our professionals track at night, which, this doesn't discriminate. Whether you're a teacher, a nurse, a doctor, or a custodian. It kind of hits all economics. It hits all races, which is one of the really cool things about this recovery journey. I've met people from other countries who everyone struggles with the same thing. It might be different types of drugs,
Hmm.
but everything is pretty similar. But yeah, I've known a ton of people in the Northern Valley area who have passed away because of this disease, and I think it's a privilege that we're able to open up kind of in their honor. So.
Hmm. Going back just a second, you said there was like an incident that happened. Do you want to talk about that or not here?
An incident where when my house burned down.
You just mentioned that was like the inciting incident that like led to your recovery. Something happened and you ended up in the hospital.
Yeah, sure. I was in I'm very open with my recovery, my story, but it was I don't know if it was 3 or 4 days, but it was I guess you would call it that last hurrah that a lot of addicts and alcoholics go through, where you know it's coming to the end. I had already made a panic call to my father saying that I needed help. He said he was, coming home, and I wasn't ready, but I went on this binge of many different substances, a lot of alcohol over a 3 to 4 day period, and
Hmm.
I don't know what happened if I was they said I was in like almost like a drug delirium, and I ended up in Nyack, New York, just parked in the middle of Route 59, and this amazing police officer. I really wish I could go back and find out who he was, because he's part of the reason why I'm on this journey. And he had two different options. He could have taken me to jail because I was obviously extremely impaired in operating a motor vehicle, or he could have called my mother. And that's what he ended up doing. He ended up calling my mother, and this kind of sparked the entire, recovery journey that I had. It was a 3 to 4 day blackout where I don't really remember anything during that time frame, just bits and pieces from people telling me over the years what happened. And, I was able to get into a hospital. I didn't know the recovery options that were out there. There wasn't the same type of awareness that there is today. I lost my father 3 years into my recovery, and he
Mm.
was my role model, and he mentored me. And the way I look at it now is I had 25 years of an amazing relationship with him. But the my high school that I went to, Northern Highlands, they do a award in his honor, and I went there with my mother this year to support her, and she presents it in front of the graduating class. And I heard about two different awards they were giving out for people, for young, adolescents who were, bringing awareness to mental health and substance use. And I think as a society, we've come a long way since I was growing up. Doesn't mean we're completely there yet, but I'm really proud of the Northern Jersey and the New Jersey as a whole, of how far they've come with bringing awareness and trying to remove the stigma as much as possible.
Hmm. You think that peer to peer, especially like for you just personally, that is like a method that works really well, just like peer to peer discussions.
I think it works extremely well. I think it's extremely important, and I think it's something that we need to push more on. But I do think there is a time and place for a true clinical observation,
Yeah.
clinical sessions, as well as psychiatric, which we offer all those at our center. But for me, this is just my story. It doesn't mean it's going to work for everyone. It was
Hmm.
really that peer to peer program, and that's essentially what I went to down in Florida, as well as a peer to peer run program. We didn't have clinicians. It was a bunch of people who ran the program who were in long term recovery. And it was a great experience for me personally. So, but I think in our high schools and our college, the more peer to peer conversations that we can have with the at risk youth, the bigger impact we're going to have.
Um, Going back kind of for a second, it's like you had mentioned growing up, you dealt with anxiety and depression later on. So treating those were also integral to like treating your active addiction. Could you say that?
Could you repeat the question one more time? It just cut out a little bit.
Oh yeah, you're fine. So, considering that you had anxiety and depression later on growing up, those two like risk factors, you had to treat those like mental health conditions in order to help benefit your recovery. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you're 100% spot on. And I wasn't even it's amazing. I wasn't even aware that I was dealing with anxiety, because, this all came from a therapist that, I spoke to, and, I was explaining my childhood, and she kept saying it stemmed from your childhood. It stems from your childhood. Everything is kind of correlated, with your addiction. And I'm like, I had a great childhood. I had great friends. I was in a great community. And when she started to hear about it, she's like, you've struggled with anxiety since you were probably 7 or 8 years old. That's not normal for you to feel that amount of pressure speaking in front of a classroom. So when the substances were removed in a medically detox setting, and I went through residential treatment, then I was just left with me. And at the end of the day, if I didn't work on some of those mental health diagnoses that I had, I would have never been able to do it. I would have, had the same anxieties come up, and it would have triggered me to go back to a pill or a bottle of liquor. So but it was extremely important in my recovery that I looked at the whole picture, as well as the whole family dynamic. Right, my family came out to the family group that they ran, and they learned boundaries, and those boundaries were really important for them to learn because they didn't know how to deal with me anymore. And it's when you treat the whole patient, not just the initial symptom on the eye, usually you have a lot of success.
Hmm. So, since you've found like recovery and like worked at it, what are some things that are different about your life, just like in general, do you think?
I would have to say routine. Like my morning routine, for me, I'm a creature of habit, right? I need to be on a schedule. I need to have, the basic things in the morning. So my morning routine, I literally roll out of bed. I try to pray. I need some fresh air. We are kind of talking about that before I came on, how much I appreciate nature, right? So it doesn't matter how cold, how hot it is. I need to go outside, get some fresh air. I meditate. Then I make my coffee. Then I start watching Sports Center or the news or whatever it may be. And then it's kind of the same wind down at night, right? I have the same kind of routine. In the middle of the day could be different, but I need those same routines throughout it. So I'm a big component of just building your routine that works for you. Just because that works for me doesn't mean it's going to work for everyone. But through a lot of trial and error, I was able to find little routines and habits that really worked well for me.
What is about nature that you like?
I just, I don't think I ever appreciated it when I was younger. I don't think I appreciated it when I was in active addiction. It's just, it's something that's calming, right? I remember my first 90 days, in my last, recovery stint, long time ago. I remember just sitting at the beach at night because I was living in a sober living in Florida. I remember just listening to the waves crashing and how peaceful it was. It was just something that really calmed me and helped slow down those racing thoughts in your head because, once again, if you don't have different coping skills, your mind is going to race, especially if you're in early recovery. So for me, that was always like a very peaceful, centering, place to be was in the woods, in the mountains, or, on the water somewhere. So, yeah.
Hmm. That being said, Brian, we're at time, almost 1 minute left. So, do you have
Okay.
any last comments, questions, concerns before we end off today?
The only thing I'm going to say, if you are in recovery, try to give back as much as you can. I know we all have a lot of stuff going on during the day. Just stopping and talking to someone and making sure they're okay, goes a long way, right? Try and give back as much as you can. And anyone who is struggling out there, myself and hundreds of my friends have gotten sober, through various different ways. And I just encourage you to reach out and get help. So
Thank you so much, Brian.
thank you, Cheyenne. Appreciate all the work you do.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
You too. Bye.
Bye bye.